I'm Karis Burkowski, and I'm a secular humanist. Like most of you, I was raised in a religious home and community. I, quote, lost my faith, unquote, at about age 13, way back in 1962. I was in confirmation class, and the minister was teaching us about transubstantiation and consubstantiation. That's the concept when he says the magic words, the bread and wine become the actual body and blood of Christ, and then we consume them. I thought, that's just silly. Surely when Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me, he meant that we should do it symbolically as a reminder. But no, faith demanded that we believe it. Until that moment, I was a good church-going evangelical Lutheran girl, a true believer. After that class, I started paying more rational, critical attention to everything we were learning from our catechism book. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. I was confirmed with the rest of the class, but that was because it would have been unthinkable to go against the wishes of my parents or face ostracism from my classmates and friends. Christianity so dominated the culture around me that I couldn't safely admit that I no longer believed any of it. From that time on, for over half a century, religions have fascinated me. At first, I tried to find a new religion that would suit me better. After all, it was the 1960s, the brave new world of hippies and the Beatles, the exiled Dalai Lama, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the Hare Krishna movement. There are lots of ideas and concepts to explore. I read everything I could find about different religions, and I tried to experience them. While I still considered myself a cultural Christian and occasionally attended church, I tried on other religions like trying on clothes. Buddhism came closest, but nothing really fit. All of them, even Buddhism, had glass ceilings for women and treated us differently from men. This did not sit well with a young feminist. Eventually, I became a neo-pagan, having discovered that the earth-based traditions worked best for me. I loved celebrating the lunar and solar cycles, the seasons of the year, the stages of a human life. These were concepts that matched observable reality. And the moral or ethical philosophy was not that hard to follow. And if harm none, do as thou wilt. Although I stayed with that tradition for over 20 years, I kept on reading and exploring. The difference was now I was studying religions from an anthropological perspective. Viewed this way, it was completely understandable that wondrous creatures like talking snakes and flying horses would appear when required to advance the agendas of the undeniably human writers of the stories. And all the paraphernalia, such as bonnets, scarves, turbans, yarmulkes, veils, wigs, shawls, jewelry, unusual hats, ways of treating hair, forehead markings, and even special underwear, made sense as tribal insignia to separate those inside the group from those outside. The more bizarre those accoutrements were, the more they intrigued me. I continued to learn about and experience the various religious celebrations whenever I could. Fires that could never go out, books that had their own bedrooms and beds, awkward face-down prayer positions, and yes, even those Eucharist rituals that had once appalled me were now fascinating customs to observe. I went to India and joined worshippers of the great goddess Durga in her temple, experienced the exquisite lotus temple of the Baha'is, observed prayers at Sunni and Shiite masjids, and enjoyed Sufi musical presentations. I missed out on seeing the Kali temple in the mountains, but later I learned that this may have been a blessing, given that tourists still occasionally ended up as sacrifices. Look up the original meaning of the word thug. Back home, I dressed plain and attended an Amish service in one of those little white churches. I even had the rare opportunity to participate in a sweat lodge. The memory of that still takes my breath away. In 2001, self-identifying as a neo-pagan, I joined Interfaith Grand River, IGR, I got to know people from many of the religious traditions in the Grand River watershed, and I loved learning about the nuances of their beliefs. Most of them knew virtually nothing about neo-paganism, so it was great fun challenging their preconceptions. We really did not eat babies or dance naked around fires. Many of the IGR members knew about native spirituality, but they were genuinely surprised to learn that earth-based spirituality still existed and was actively practiced outside of that tradition by hundreds of people right here in KW. Oh, little thing coming up here. Okay. Still learning, I once sat facing the eternal fire in a Zoroastrian temple and listened to the priest explain that he didn't mourn the fact the Zoroastrians cannot proselytize or accept converts and will eventually die out, because he knew that it was their original concept of a good God, Ahura Mazda, paired with an evil devil that became the religious belief of the Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And I met with Rastafarians who explained that they were the descendants of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. I became a peregrina and walked the El Camino to better understand how pilgrimage can be a life-changing experience. And it really is. It's very powerful. If you get the chance to experience, do. Recently, just last month, in fact, Norm Finkelstein introduced me to the term fictionalism. When I was a practicing neo-pagan, I didn't actually believe that the lady and the Lord were deities. I saw the lady as an anthropomorphized representation of the earth, and the dying and rising Lord as the living things on the earth. I liked the idea that the major deity was female. I loved the rituals and the community, so I played along. Those constructs were just a useful fiction to hold it all together. I celebrated with that crowd for over 2 decades, and the things I learned there as a high priestess gave me opportunities to practice the skills needed for my current work as a humanist officiant. After all, a good ritual is a good ritual, whatever the particulars. Finally, about 10 years ago, I discovered humanism. Humanism unites the emotions and the intellect to provide a solid foundation for living. I agree with the philosopher Alain de Botton that the benefits of religion include morality, guidance, and consolation. Now that I have the language to self-identify as a humanist, I'm better able to access all of that without any cognitive dissonance. Humanists tend to be cerebral, and their meetings are like brunches or coffee chats. They have not yet recognized something that most religions know. A good ritual involves music and singing, which gets the whole group to breathe as one and reinforces group cohesion. An effective ritual leaves you with a feeling that something has been altered. When I do a ritual such as a wedding, baby welcoming, coming of age ceremony, or funeral, I try to use all of the elements that make it meaningful. As my wise IGR Sikh friend, Kuldeep, who some of you might remember with his impressive white beard and red turban, once told me, music softens the wax so that an impression can be made. For a very brief time, I associated with some flame-throwing atheists, but they quickly became tiresome. Why would people self-describe by stating something they are not? Much better to choose a worldview that describes what you are, what you do believe in, and humanism provided that. I no longer question the strange things that believers believe, or think they believe, or say they believe, as long as they don't use those beliefs as justification to harm others, or impose those beliefs on governments in order to take away the rights of others. I'm grateful to IGR for helping me find my way to this inclusive worldview. I continue to feel enthusiastic about interfaith activities, even after 22 years, because I have been here from the beginning. If belief, or even fictionalism, helps those who attend church, synagogue, masjid, or temple to be better people, then I don't see any problem with it. I hope that IGR will continue its good work, and I look forward to participating in efforts to educate the community about the wonderful kaleidoscope of spiritual traditions in our midst. Thank you.